This door is open, and we open this door wide for Wendy Karr, one of our favorite speakers. She will be speaking today about gratitude. And I would like to introduce Wendy. Wendy received the Unity Teacher status in 2000, serving as the Adult Education Coordinator to Unity Canada. Wendy has also been an active participant in the review of spiritual education and enrichment path. Wendy is a facilitator of SCE courses, bringing her love of Bible studies, Unity history, and metaphysics to participants. Most recently, she was invited to be an instructor at Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute. Wendy's Sunday lessons bring an eclectic mix of Unity knowledge, scriptural references, and life experiences. She is so honored to be with us today, and we are honored to have her. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to be with my Ottawa and Kitchener peeps. And I am so grateful to be here today. And I'm so excited that my uncle is on the call today, getting to see me in person. So there we are. So as Debbie said at the beginning, the power for the month is zeal. So I'm going to base this talk, as I have been this year. I've been using this booklet. Mine is custom done because I actually wore my copy out because I refer to it so often. And I've made that information available to both spiritual centers. So I'm trusting that you'll be able to get a copy for yourself if you so desire. So what are these 12 powers? Just a little history here. For those of you who might be new to Unity or might not have experienced 12 powers before. So our co-founder, Charles, decided that and these are my words, not his, that spirituality is like a huge block of cheese. You know, those huge things that, you know, the cheesemakers have in their vaults, just to get ready for sale. You can't eat it all in one bite. And so he chose to break the essence of his understanding of spirituality into 12 sections. So each month we could work on a particular section. As we chose to. Now, that said, his wife, our other co-founder, wasn't as keen on it. She believed in oneness. So you don't have to go buy into the 12 powers. I personally find them very useful because sometimes if I'm facing a very big issue, I don't have the energy to, add on too much. I just need a little bite, just a little pick me up to help me get through what it is I'm going through. So that's where we're going to go today. So as Debbie said at the beginning, our zeal or enthusiasm stems from the medulla oblongata at the base of the brain, in the back of the neck. For me personally, if I'm doing something and I'm overly zealous in a non-productive way, I will get a headache right there. And that's my body telling me, okay, stop, pause, meditate, slow down, do something. You're rushing in where you're not supposed to. So in the booklet, in each chapter, which is one of the powers, they have 7 steps. And for those of you who have seen any of my series from this year, you'll know that I've said before, and I'm saying it again, it's not meant to be a linear progression. Because let's face it, life isn't linear. You experience things, sometimes for a second, third, fourth time, but at a different understanding. And so I like to think of the steps as like a cha-cha. You take a step forward, you might take 2 steps back, you might take a step to the side. And so you make a dance of it, and there might be a plot twist in the middle just to make things interesting. But just going through the structure of the booklet, the first step, and I have to give thanks to one of the LUT candidates who brought this idea of zeal as being like a rocket ship. And I give thanks to her for bringing that to my attention because I've really glommed onto it. So the first step that's identified in the booklet is dissatisfaction. And so it's that point where you want something bigger, you want something better, you want to be happier, you want to be more prosperous, you want to be healthier, you want to have greater wholeness. So just that awareness. And I don't know if any of you have had that on your path where you just kind of felt like, you know what, all of this making money and working and just doing isn't really working for me anymore. I need something where I'm being. The next two steps I've combined because they both describe being prepared for the journey. That preparation, that making sure all the equipment's on board, making sure that the fuel is up to snuff, making sure that the team is ready to get into the space shuttle to launch. So too for us, we have mental preparation. We have that discussion with our ego about, you know what? I'm choosing to turn away from you. I'm choosing to turn away to some extent from my human self and focus on my spiritual self as well to try and find that balance between the two. And it may not be perfect. I mean, there's times where it is perfectly fine and perfectly appropriate and absolutely perfect to be wholly in your human self. And there are times when it is perfect to be wholly in your spiritual self. For me, I kind of like to think of life as being like a coin. You've got your human self, you got your spiritual self, and you kind of roll back and forth. But the goal is to roll on the edge of the coin and keep that balance between the two. But this is the point where we might start doing some studies. We might join a spirit group. We might take an SEE class. We might listen to a unity lesson from another ministry. But we start to bring into ourselves the skills, the awareness, the knowledge that will help us to bring more of our spiritual self into being. And some of it is unlearning. Some of it is letting go of things. And that's part of the process. It's about unlearning, relearning, and learning new stuff. So that is our next step, is that preparation for our beginnings. So an affirmation that I take at this point: I enthusiastically accept my good and go forward to achieve my purpose. And that's really what rockets are for, aren't they? It's a way of getting itself out of the grasp of the Earth's gravity into exploring outside of what it is that we know. So I want to just, usually at this point, I would go to the fourth step. I want to take a little side trip because one of the questions that I got asked was, well, what is the fuel for this? We know that these rockets have, great levels of fuel to get them up to break that gravity. And what I've discerned, and is confirmed by other writers and speakers, is that gratitude is a huge fuel for us in our spiritual path and in our human path. When I was a kid in my church of origin, believe it or not, we had Christian comic books, which is a whole other talk unto itself. But one that really stuck with me was The Hiding Place, based on the book of the same name by Corrie ten Boom. And her family hid Jews in the Netherlands during World War II at a point where their lives were at risk. And in this booklet, we have the two sisters talking. Her Corey's in the foreground, and Corey says, "Betsy, how can we go on turning the other cheek?" And Betsy says, "We must, Corey. We must show them love is stronger than hate." And of course, that I would have been a tween at the point that I was introduced to this, so I was probably affected more than I might have been had I seen it later. But in this, they're doing Bible study, and Betsy quotes 1 Thessalonians 5, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances." And Corey says, as rightfully I would too, how do we give thanks? We're in this concentration camp. And Betsy points out to her that they weren't strip searched when they entered. So they didn't find the Bibles that they had hidden in their undergarments. So they were free to continue to do their Bible study, which was a source of strength and faith for them. The guards left them alone because they already had bed bugs and lice and all sorts of other things in their barracks that the men didn't want. So there were things that she could say. And of course, our Sunday school teacher at the time said, if they can give thanks in those circumstances, why can't you give thanks in yours? And then I believe it was the next week or the week after, we got a Sunday school leaflet where two kids had gotten chicken pox. And I could relate to that because I had chicken pox. And the dad left for work and he said, by the end of the day, I want you to fill three pieces of paper, both sides, with things you're grateful for. And the kids are like, well, we can't do that. And he left them. And by the end of it, they had filled 5 pages because they realized how they could find gratitude in the midst of things. So how do we do this? So I'm going to give you some more hints because I have, as many of you know, I have what I call a spiritual toolbox. And for me, it's not about just, I only pray or I only meditate or I only read scriptures or I only read books. There's a lot more that we can add to that. So first of all, I'll invite you to make a daily appointment with yourself and yourself. The capital S self is meant to represent your spiritual side, your divine side. That's how unity writers delineate between the two sides of ourselves. Anything in capital letters is meant to indicate or imply the divine, the eternal, the universal, that which is common to all of us and is meant to remind us that we have that other aspect of ourselves. Be aware of the blessings. So going back to my story about the dad and the kids. So by the end of it, they had started with, the mom had brought their trays for breakfast up and they looked at their trays and there was a bowl of cereal. And they realized, well, you have the company that makes the cereal. And then from the cereal, you have the truck driver that brings the grains to the factory. And then going back, you have the farmer who plants the fields and harvests the fields. And then you have the sun and the rain that makes the plants grow. And then you have the seed that begins the whole process. And then they started on the milk in their cereal and worked their way back to the cows. And then they worked their way back on how their bowl and their spoon was made, and so on and so on. And so, as you can imagine, by the time they'd had 2 meals and looked around, looked out the window to see what was going on, read some books, they had lots of blessings to pull on. Find the blessing or gift in unpleasant or distressing situations. A Unity minister friend of mine used to say, if you're in a situation that's unpleasant, try to find at least 3, if not 5, things to be grateful for. And I may have shared this before, but it's worth repeating. Some other Unity ministers that I knew, when they were in school, at a time when you lived on site to go to school, now it's done a little differently. They lived off campus and it was a snowy day and their car went into the ditch. And one of them said, I think we need to pray the so what prayer. And of course, all my classmates were listening to our instructor tell this story. We're like, the so what prayer? What the heck's the so what prayer? So they got together, they took some deep breaths to get their heart rate down because it had been a little, distressing going into the ditch. And they said, well, here we are. So what? We're all okay. The airbags didn't go off. We aren't hurt. We haven't broken any bones. We haven't given ourselves concussions. We're fine. It was a very soft landing. We're grateful for that. The car's in the ditch. So what? It's in snow. So likely we haven't sustained any major damage. It feels like we're just stuck in the snow and we'll need to dig ourselves out or get someone to help tow us out. And we're grateful for that. We're not far from home. We can walk safely home. It's not snowing that hard now. We have lights. We can see where we're going. So what? We can give thanks for that. And so they worked their way through. And by the end of it, they were in a place where they were feeling more gratitude than stressed or worried or concerned. I'm not saying it's an easy prayer to pray. And I'm saying for myself, in the times when I've experienced something and I've been able to say the so what prayer, it's kept my heart rate down. It's kept me calm. It's kept me in the space where I was able to do whatever I needed to do next, whether it was call for assistance, figure out what my next best step was, or just kind of go, well, that was an interesting experience. Let's move on. Thanksgiving. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a couple slides, but just to be in a space of giving, whether it's of yourself or of something tangible. You know, I struggle with people who are begging on the corners, but I can give them my attention. I can give them my time and listen to their story so that they feel seen, I hope, so that at the end of it, they've been recognized. They've been acknowledged as a fellow child of God rather than as something that's to be shied away from or hidden. And gratitude, that's what happens when you slam together the words gratitude and meditation. More on this in a moment. We're going to experience it for our meditation time. From Reverend Paulette Pipe, give thanks for more than just the things that feel right and feel comfortable. As I said with the so what prayer, it can be very difficult to give thanks for things that are challenging, especially if it's something that you're attached to or you have a lot of emotional investment in, and it's time to move on to another step. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying it's part of the journey, and it's often a very important part of the journey. Handle yourself with great gentleness during sad, traumatic, scary, or angry times. These are good times to invite another to hold to the broad vision of the gift for you in the midst of the chaos until you are ready to receive it for yourself. This is an opportunity to use Silent Unity or the prayer team at both ministries, or even just a friend of yours to say, I'm having a rough time. Can you hold a vision for me of wholeness until I'm ready to claim it for myself? And having someone hold that for you is so important because it's really easier to get to that space if someone else can already to describe it for you. If they can tell you how whole and prosperous and beautiful and talented you are at a time when you cannot feel it for yourself. And be kind to yourself. Remember, we're told even Jesus wept. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. In my church of origin, we didn't talk much about Jesus weeping or Jesus getting angry or Jesus doing anything except being very peaceable and loving. And I think that did a disservice to my understanding of the man Jesus and the pathway that he provided. So please be gentle with yourself, be kind with yourself. Give in a spirit of love and give when you cannot see any possibility of return. So said our co-founder. So Thanksgiving, another version of it. For every blessing you have received, give one blessing away. Size doesn't matter, and it doesn't have to be to the person from whom you receive. This is not an accounting ledger. It does not have to balance out. But I know one of the things that brings me great joy is that being able to bless people in ways that are so simple. I took some family down to Niagara Falls, and I will often go down to the falls because it's close to me, just by myself. And as I'm wandering around, taking pictures myself, you'll often see groups of people, and they're switching out so that everybody can get in the picture. And I'll go up to them and gesture, would you like me to take the picture for you? And it gives me such great joy because I know that they now have that picture where all of them are in the picture. They don't have to digitize them in later. It's just a little thing. Takes me maybe a minute. And I don't share that to brag or whatever, but just to say it's so simple. It can be such a simple, and it doesn't cost me anything, a minute of my time. So there may be things where you think, well, that's too small to do, or that's not valuable enough. You never know what someone else is needing. And it may be that you have exactly what they need, and they can pass it on to others. Back to our 7 steps. As Debbie quoted at the beginning of our gathering, the awakening power of zeal is the flame that burns but does not destroy. It begins to generate the energy you need to accomplish the things you need to do. Notice it's not so much the space shuttle that's pushing. It's that big tank of energy, that big tank of fuel that will bring it into that orbit where the gravity is not as strong. Her co-founder, Charles, when he was in his 94th year, wrote, "I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me." And I think of that, and when I was going through to become a licensed Unity teacher, we used to tease each other, "Are you fairly sizzling?" So I invite you to ask yourself in the morning, am I fairly sizzling? Am I filled with enthusiasm for something in my life? And if I'm not, is there something I need to change? I realized I needed to leave my government job in spite of the fact that I had some decent benefits and I had a pension, because I wasn't fairly sizzling. I was dreading going to work. And that was a sign for me that after some careful prayer and discussion with my late husband about what I would do next, that I would submit my resignation. And that was 6 years ago. And my goodness, the things I have done in the last 6 years are just amazing. Our next step, our 5th, 6th, and 7th steps, I've put together. Quickening. You know, often we'll hear that in the form of childbirth, the quickening of the baby. Well, so too with us, the quickening, that idea that we're getting enthusiastic about things, that we are becoming aware of things that we can do, places we might be called to, tasks that we don't think we have the skill set for, but we discover that, gee, I'm really good at that. I just never realized it, or I never made space for it in my life to explore it more fully. Genius. In this case, it talks about, in the booklet, about how the person is so a part of the spiritual faculty, whether it's zeal or any of the other 12 whole, that it seems effortless to them. You know, I often think of musicians as being geniuses. I know a couple who can sit down and they're playing the first song for the service, and they realize that most of the congregation's struggling to hit the notes, and they just immediately transpose it without having to write it out like I would. You know, that they can just go into that space of, okay, that's the wrong key, let me find the right key. So genius is where that point where you can look at in the mirror and say, I'm a genius because I can see how this is expressing in me. And finally, energy. The complete development of your God-given potential of zeal results in continuous, unfailing supply of energy. I'm not at step 7 yet. Not sure if I've ever been there. If I have, it's been for sporadic times. But it's something to strive for. It's something to say, there's always going to be more until I am not just expressing something, but I am that. And just as a little sidebar, the photo that I give thanks to NASA for sharing with us, that's actually above the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, which is seen as, you know, one of the main starting points for the Judeo-Christian traditions. So I just, it was so perfect for us. And that's what I have to say about zeal and gratitude. So let's try a little gratitation. Bring things you are thankful for into the silence and truly feel gratitude for them. And so I'll just invite you as we move into our time of quiet, of meditation, to just get comfortable in your chair. So soften your gaze. If you wish to close your eyes, that's fine. If you wish to take in this screen, that's perfect too. And just allow yourself to breathe into this moment. Allowing what has been in the past to just be in the past, and what is to come in the future to just be in the future. Giving yourself permission to just be here now. And if needs be, give your ego something to chew on and just tell it to be quiet for a little while. There's nothing to do. You can allow my words to be your words, or you can just shut me out and go to a space of your choosing. But on this Thanksgiving Sunday, we bring forward our gratitude for everything that has brought us to this space, everyone who has influenced us, whether it has been through encouragement or showing us what we don't want in our lives. We give thanks for them. For those opportunities we've had to learn, to grow, to unlearn, to relearn through new eyes. Knowing that just because we have given up going to school the way we did as children, that we have not stopped learning, that every moment gives us an opportunity to expand, to unlearn, to relearn, and to learn. And in this now moment, let us just take a few moments in the silence to give thanks for those who have inspired us, those who have taught us lessons, those who are perhaps no longer on this plane of existence, but we remember them with gratitude for what they taught us, the lessons they shared in the silence. And as we move into this week, as we move into this celebration of Thanksgiving, as many of us have opportunities to bring family together, whether for a meal or a walk in the woods, or whatever serves us best, we are so grateful. And we close our time with Myrtle Fillmore's credo: to enjoy without possession, to see without coveting, to have without holding, to be without seeing, in short, to be myself without desiring, to be generous-hearted, what I see others may see, what I enjoy others may share also on equal terms with me. And for this time together, for this gathering, we are so grateful. And so it is, and so it shall be. Amen.